Welcome back to the Dr. Matthew Hyland's Pilot Plant. I'm Chef Rob Dumas, and I'm joined here today by Dr. Colt Knight, and we are continuing our video series on poultry breakdown, and now we're going to get into how we approach cooking different cuts of poultry based on if they're lightly used muscles or heavily used muscles, and then approaching that with either low and slow or hot and fast cooking techniques. And we're going to illustrate several different preparations today as kind of foundational cooking techniques, not so much, recipes that you have to follow to a T to have a good outcome. This is about cooking principles. So I'm excited to do these videos today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be cooking shortly. All right, so for our first video today in our Cooking Poultry series, we're going to start out with a very inexpensive but very delicious cut of chicken. So we're going to be working with leg quarters, skin on, bone in, but you absolutely could use thighs, you could use just drums, you could even do this with boneless, skinless thigh meat if that was something that you happen to have available. But for the utility and the ease, I love a bone-in leg quarter. Very easy piece of poultry to work with, very inexpensive. So we're going to be approaching this in a low and slow, moist cooking environment, something called a braise. So to braise, we've got our protein, we have a pot that we have a lid for, and then we have our aromatics and our liquid. We're going to be taking kind of a southwestern approach to this today, doing a enchilada type preparation or a taco type preparation. Really, the technique is what matters. You can change up the ingredients to fit your preferences and go any direction that you want. But let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to turn on our pot here. I'm using a gas burner, and I'm going to have it at about medium-high heat. Now while my pot's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and season my leg quarters. So I like to season using kosher salt, and I like to rain the kosher salt over the product. And the reason you want to rain it over is you're going to get better distribution of your spices that way, and you're going to get a more even seasoning. Now it might look like I'm using a lot of salt, but keep in mind a lot of that salt is going to kind of fall off and not end up in the final dish. Not to mention there's quite a bit of liquid and quite a bit of chicken to season here. So, and to be totally honest, salt makes everything better, much to the chagrin of my blood pressure. But either way, so we season one side, and then because we want to have full flavor, we're going to flip it over and we're going to season the opposite side. Now by using a pair of tongs and not touching the poultry itself, a great way to keep your hands from getting contaminated with any kind of pathogens or bacteria from the chicken. When you touch something raw and then you touch something cooked, that's called cross-contamination. So you want to be very cognizant of how you are approaching cooking any raw protein from a safety perspective. So this is a good way to do it. We've got a tray that captures any juices, and we are not touching the poultry with our bare hands and then touching anything else that we're going to eat. So we have that nicely seasoned on both sides. I'm going to flip it back over, and our pot should be nicely preheated now, and we're going to go into this pot first with a little bit of a neutral cooking oil. So I'm using just a classic vegetable oil today. You could use lard, you could use clarified butter. I would not recommend using something like an olive oil. Olive oil can have some bitter grassy notes. Not super delicious if it gives your food kind of that bitter flavor. So I've got just enough oil to cover the bottom of my pot, and I can see from the way that the oil looks that it's plenty hot. It's shimmering, lightly smoking. We're going to go ahead and go in with our chicken. You always want to get your pot preheated and your oil preheated prior to putting your product in. That will help keep things from sticking and creating any kind of a burnt surface. So we're only going to go in with 2 at a time here because we don't want to crowd our pot. You want to have a little bit of space around those leg quarters, and that's going to allow it to brown rather than steam. So that browning is the Maillard reaction. That's going to really improve the depth of flavor in your final dish. You could certainly skip this step, but it's not going to be as flavorful and it's not going to be as delicious as it would be if you took the time to brown it properly. So we're going to spend a few minutes browning this, and then we're going to come back and we're going to continue to build the rest of our braise. All right, so we got a really nice brown. on that. And it's okay to go right back onto the tray here because ultimately these are going to go back in and they're going to cook for a couple more hours. But we want to go right back into this pot real quick with our next two leg quarters and get those browning in there as well. But don't those just look beautiful? Gorgeous golden color. We've rendered out some of that chicken fat from the skin. That's going to really make this taste just delicious. We've got our chicken out of the pot. We've got a nice brown caramelized color on the skin. And in our pot, we've got some cooked on, stuck on bits. They're deep golden brown, nicely caramelized. And we're going to go ahead and go in with, I poured off the oil that I seared the chicken in because sometimes it can get a little bit smoky or a little bit too dark. If you do it low and slow enough, you can save that oil and use it, but I like to discard if it's gotten any color to it. So into the pot that we browned the chicken, we're going to go in with some aromatics. So the first thing we're going to go in with is some white onion. And then along with that white onion, I've got a couple cloves of garlic. Here we've got some seeded jalapeno and some diced bell pepper. And then I've got, this is kind of maybe unique or novel for some folks. This is the stem of the cilantro. So cilantro is a lovely soft herb. Typically you want to approach soft herbs with minimal cooking, but the stems have a lot of flavor. And so we're going to go ahead and go right into our pot with those stems. And I'm going to go ahead and stir this in nicely. And it's going to start to break down, and it's going to start to pick up any of that cooked on chicken bits that were in the bottom of the pot. Now, if you were a culinary school person or a chef at some point in your life, the browned or burnt on part of the pot would have been taught to you to call that fond. And I love that word or that term because it's very easy to remember that you are fond of fond. When you deglaze or you pick up those stuck on bits, you're creating a lot deeper flavor throughout your dish, and really a nice technique. And you can either use a liquid to deglaze or you can use the liquid that comes out of the vegetables that you're cooking. So in addition to my onions, peppers, and garlic and cilantro, I'm going to add in just a little pinch of salt. And the reason I'm going to add that salt is the salt is going to help break down those vegetables a little bit faster. It's going to pull the moisture out of them, and it's going to help get us to that place where those onions are giving us a nice sweet flavor rather than that hot kind of sulfury flavor that a raw onion has. This is going to give us that more caramelized, sweet, delicious flavor that like a caramelized onion or a grilled onion would add to a dish. Okay, so our salt's in there. This already smells really wonderful. Now we're going to do a couple more things here to really build some flavor. So the Spanish use a term called sofrito. And sofrito is where you add in a little bit of tomato product, you add in some spices, and you cook that mixture of mirepoix or aromatics along with that to really develop depth, right? Not incredibly important. The dish will still taste good without it, but you know, someone once told me that good cooking is the culmination of a lot of attention to detail, right? So a lot of minute steps, all being done right, yields the best results. So this is one of those steps that I will openly admit is optional, but will take your dish to an even better place if you take the time to do it. So to that point, I've got tomato paste here, and I'm going to go for about a tablespoon of tomato paste that I'm going to add into my mirepoix there. And then I have in this container, I have some freshly ground cumin seed, a little bit of freshly ground chili, bay leaves, a little bit of oregano, and a little bit of black pepper. And I'm going to go right into the pot, maybe not with this entire amount of spice because it can be quite a bit. You could certainly season your chicken with this mixture. I find that chilies have a proclivity to burn in a searing application. So a lot of times I will add my chilies into my mirepoix mixture rather than directly onto my chicken, just to kind of limit the potential for things getting burnt in my pot. So this is looking really lovely here. We don't have to cook this until it's completely broken down, but we'll give it just a minute or so. With tomato paste, some chefs will refer to the cooking of the tomato paste as a blooming step or something like that. The idea is to alleviate some of the tinny flavor that canned or jarred tomato paste can add. So we'll give that just a second more, and then we're going to go in with our liquid components. So our liquid for this today, we're going to use some chicken stock, and we're also going to use some tomato puree. Now, what makes a braise different than a stew or a soup is the amount of liquid. So with a braise, you want to use just enough liquid to keep the product cooking in a moist environment, but not so much that you're boiling it like you would in maybe a corned beef or something like that. You want just enough, not too much. All right, so I can see now that the tomato paste is starting to stick on to the bottom of the pot in some areas, and in a lot of ways, it's very similar to like what we were talking about in terms of developing fond. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my chicken leg quarters back into the pot. And now that I'm not worried about browning them, I can go ahead and stick all 4 of them in here and really pack them in kind of tight. And then I'm going to go ahead and go in with my liquid. And the goal here is to bring this liquid up just to about a quarter of the way or half of the way up these leg quarters. So there's not an exact measurement on this, because it really matters what your particular vessel that you're cooking them in and how much chicken and vegetables and whatnot you have in that pot. So got it in there. The pot was nice and hot. These are good commercial pots, so they retain and hold heat really well. But what you can see here is that the chicken is not totally submerged, but it has liquid all around it, and that's going to help it cook nice and gentle and slow. And I'm just going to kind of work that tomato puree around just a little bit, make sure that all my chicken is nicely nestled in its flavorful jacuzzi bath here. And it is going to now cook for about an hour. We have our leg quarters. They've finished up braising. Okay, so they've been cooking for about an hour and a half. They've gotten, hopefully, as we pull them out of this pot here, they will be nice and tender. The meat will be succulent and juicy. There's this interesting thing that happens when you're cooking a cut of meat that has been heavily used. It's typically what you would call collagen rich. And what I mean by that is that the muscles that are used more have more cartilaginous bits to them, and ligaments and tendons and muscle caps and all of that. And those parts will actually break down and they'll create a richer, more viscous stock that they leave behind. And that's dissolved collagen or gelatin, and it makes a much better leftover braising liquid, while it also lubricates the meat on the inside. And so earlier when we were talking about cooking breast meat, we were looking for an internal temperature of 165. But in this instance, what we're actually looking to do is cook it well beyond 165 and get it up to internal temperatures of 185, 187, 190. And at that temperature is where you start to have that collagen breakdown. And so inside this meat, there are bits of cartilage and all of that that have broken down and basically moisturized it from the inside out, which is really exciting. And then some of the excess collagen ended up into our broth here. And we're going to use this as kind of like an enchilada sauce today. And we're going to use this meat as the filling for a delicious taco or enchilada, which we're going to prepare today. So we have our meat out. We're going to let that cool down a little bit, and then we're going to peel off the skin. We're going to peel off the bones, and we'll discard that part, but we'll use the meat that's left behind, which we will shred up. And we're going to take this broth here. I have something called an immersion blender. So this is basically a stick blender. So it's got a blade on the end. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend up this, this braising liquid, which was stock, tomato paste, tomato sauce. We've got some lovely herbs in there. We're going to blend this up. We're going to reduce it just a little bit, and then we're going to use it as our sauce over our enchiladas. So we'll do that, and we'll be back in just a few minutes, and we'll show you how to plate this dish up. So we've let our chicken cool down just a little bit, and I'll just demonstrate. You know, it doesn't get easier to take the bones out than that. And then take your skin right off. You know, that skin's totally edible if you want to eat it. But you know, this is just fall apart tender. You do want to watch out. You know, once you've pulled that leg bone out, there is still a little bit of residual cartilage and bone right there at the joint. And you know, my preference is always I'd rather leave a touch of meat on there than have someone try to chew up a piece of bone. So that's what's left. And you can see, I mean, it just comes right apart. As easy as you could hope when you've braised it properly, right? So if it hasn't been cooked long enough, then that bone won't slide out just like that. Very good. So we have all of our dark meat chicken here, our leg quarters, shredded off. I went through it and I tore it up just a little bit. I want to leave, you know, some nice texture and size to it, because I think that's, you know, one of the trademarks of good cooking is when it's still tender, even when it's a big bite. You don't have to chop this really fine to make it palatable. I did add just a little bit of salt and a little bit more of our spice blend that we had from earlier, that oregano, cumin, and chili. And what I've done with the liquid and the vegetables that braised with that, you saw me blending it. It was a little bit on the thin side still, so I put it back on the burner and I reduced it down. And now we have this lovely, you know, almost gravy or sauce-like consistency here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly dress this chicken meat with that. And now, if you wanted to put this in a taco or a burrito, delicious. If you wanted to put this on a sandwich, delicious. You wanted to make yourself a, you know, a burrito bowl like you get at Chipotle kind of thing, absolutely would work perfect. But as a way to kind of illustrate the culinary value or the real quality that's left behind in that braising liquid, we're going to do an enchilada, right? So that's basically like making a burrito or a taco and then bathing it in that sauce. So we're going to use the other end of our pan here and put a few spoonfuls of our sauce down. And then we're going to go ahead and take some corn tortillas, okay? I like a corn tortilla for an enchilada. You're welcome to use a flour tortilla. It's totally up to you. Flour tortillas are delicious in enchiladas, but they are, the traditional approach, I think, would be to use a corn tortilla. So we've got a corn tortilla. We've got a little baking dish here. What I'm going to do first is I'm just going to dip that corn tortilla right in that sauce, and then I'm going to give it a nice little bit of our chicken filling here. Remember, you know, you don't have to totally overload the thing. It's okay to eat multiple enchiladas, at least in my book it is. We're going to wrap that up and we're going to set it right into our baking dish. This dish looks like it'll hold 3 of these nicely. Now you could put, in addition to the chicken in here, you could put some vegetables, you know, peppers, onions. You could put a little bit of fresh herbs. If you wanted to get real kind of Tex-Mex style, you could load it up with some cheddar cheese or some Monterey Jack cheese. Something meltier is a nice option. For today, we're just going to load these up with chicken, and then we're going to put some cheese and avocado and stuff on top. We're not going to make these too melty, but certainly always a family-pleasing thing when you have something that's really ooey gooey and cheesy. So don't hesitate to take this technique and adapt it to your own family's preferences. All right, so we have those 3 filled with chicken, bathed in that tortilla, and we've got the sauce on both sides. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to take our sauce and we're going to give this a really generous bath in this absolutely beautiful enchilada sauce. Here I have a little bit of a cheese. This is a drier, saltier cheese. It's called cotija. And I'm just going to cover these in a nice little, it's like a fresh snowfall of cotija cheese here. And we're going to pop this into the oven. We're going to let it cook until that sauce is bubbly all around. Then we're going to top this with some herbs, a little bit of fresh avocado, squeeze of lime, and you couldn't come up with a better snowy Maine winter day meal. To wrap up our braised chicken leg quarters, we're going to go ahead and finish garnishing this. So this has been in the oven, and we got our cotija cheese, nicely browned. I've got a couple of final garnishes here. There you go, Mr. Colt.
I'm just going to put it all in my mouth.
Do it. Mm-hmm. That salty cotija cheese, a rich braising liquid. That's yummy. All right, time to do some dang dishes.
This video was brought to you by the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Grazing Behavior Lab and the Dr. Matthew Hyland's Pilot Plant. We would like to extend a special thank you to Knight Family Farm in Garland, Maine for donating the chickens for this presentation.